Welcome to Airways Airsports, and we're at Darley Airfield on our apron. We've been asking you guys what kind of videos would you like to see from us on our pre-recorded videos, and a number of great requests came through. But there was one that stuck out to me quite clearly as being a very good video for us to do, and certainly as an instructor it's a question that we get asked a lot. The downside being is we don't normally have the space or the time in order to do it, but it's certainly a topic that we would like to cover. It's certainly you as a Flexwing pilot you would want to know. So the question very much was, how do we go from this to this? So before we start doing any work on looking at de-rigging our Flexwing Microlight, we need to take in a number of considerations. The Pilot Operating Handbook is your go-to source of information. This video that we're doing is purely a guide so you can visually see on how to do it. But please study the Pilot Operating Handbook. Some of the important things to remember is always make sure that your aircraft is safe. So turning things like checking that the magnetos are off, you may want to turn the fuel off at this point, and certainly making sure that your aircraft is okay to handle. Study that Pilot Operating Handbook, laminate some pages that are useful to keep with the trike, and certainly carry out your daily inspections and the guidelines set out in the manufacturer's Pilot Operating Handbook. The reason we've chosen this one is because it's one of the most popular Flexwings and Ultralights on the market, certainly in the UK. But as we'll discuss, there are a number of differences between the types of Flexwings and how you do de-rig them and rig them. Obviously it's near on impossible to go through them all, but I'll try and discuss some of the differences. But this is by far one of the most popular ones. Fortunately, regardless of the type, whether it be a GT450, one of the more modern machines, or one of the XLs, one of the older machines, the process is pretty much the same. So we've chosen a Quantum 912, this is our school aircraft, just because it's the easiest one to show you with. Okay, so...
And it's not just because it's the first one out the hangar?
No, it definitely wasn't the first one out the hangar. So your team today, my name is Mark Hilton, I'm the Chief Flying Instructor at Airways Airsports, and behind the camera we have Barry. Barry hasn't done this before or seen one of these rigged or de-rigged, which gives us a great situation. Barry's going to be hopefully asking those questions that you'll be thinking as you're watching this video. So please think hard about those questions, and Barry will try to ESP them and magic them onto out of his mouth, be it in 5 years time when you're watching this. Okay, so let's have a look at the Quantum Microlight. First of all, you'll see that we have this in a wing down situation. So the reason that the wing is down in this situation is so that the wind is blowing onto the wing and pushing down on the trike. If we're in the other situation, the wing was up, the wind can push on the wing and possibly tip over the trike. Obviously the wind conditions today are perfect for us, perfect for flying to be honest, but perfect for what we're doing today.
So what wind speed do you think we've got? Well,
the maximum surface wind for a Quantum is around 15 knots. For me, when you are de-rigging and rigging a Flexwing, you're going to have to put the nose into wind at some point, which means that this aircraft loaded up will take off or unstick around about 38-40 miles an hour. You're going to take out half of its weight. So 15-20 knots on its own, it will start moving around. For me, I would halve that. So anything around sort of 10 knots is probably about the maximum. And again, I can't sort of urge enough, 10 knots would be for an experienced person. If this is the first time that you will be de-rigging or rigging a Flexwing, even a hang glider, you want to practice it in a non-threatening environment. Strong winds really will spoil your day, and having been hanging off the side of one of these trying to prevent it from rolling over, it's a fruitless exercise. So don't turn oh, I have a great idea into I wish I never did that. So really sort of it's something that you do want to practice. So here as us, we're in a park situation, and we want to de-rig this Flexwing. Should we not be storing it in a fully rigged situation and we want to put it on a trailer, this is what we'd be looking. And more importantly, and this is very much the case, most Flexwing pilots now tend to keep their wing, either the or trike, fully rigged in a hangar, or semi-rigged where they'll just drop the wing. We're going to go through the full process of getting this wing into a bag. So the first thing I want to be doing when planning on de-rigging, it very much is a planning on de-rigging, is first of all assessing your environment that you're in. Which way is the wind coming from? The wind is coming from this direction and blowing onto the trike. And also interested in what is the ground condition that I'm using on. Obviously these wings are very fragile. We don't want to be dragging them on rough tarmac or lots of stones. Certainly we want to be making sure that the area that we're going to be working in is a nice area for us to be finding that lost pin that we drop. So we've picked our area. We've assessed where the wind's coming from, and is it gusting, is it changing direction, backing or veering, and what are we going to expect? And bear in mind it's going to take you 30 minutes, 45 minutes to do this. I'd also recommend that certainly for the first couple of times you do this with the aid of somebody else, but coming back, the issue that we have is most people keep these aircraft fully rigged or semi-rigged, and at some point you're going to find yourself in a field. And you want to make your aircraft as safe as possible whilst you go and try and find help, whether it be call somebody to pick you up, or whether it be go and talk to the local farmer to say, I've landed in your field, please don't commandeer my aircraft. So when we get to what we call the squat, we'll take a pause and look at how we would make our aircraft safe from there. So let's go take a look at the Flexwing in more detail. So what I've just done is I've now turned the aircraft into wind. What we discussed, the reason we have the wing down is to make it safe, and so therefore turning this aircraft into wind is putting it in a not necessarily happy situation. So what I've done is I've tied the bar back using the rear seat belts to offer a negative angle of attack, again, so the aircraft is being pushed down into the ground. And even in this light wind, you can see that the wing is wanting to move around, just weathercocking and just sorting it out. We're now maybe 5 knots of wind, so you can imagine what a more increase in wind would be doing to that wing. And the first thing we need to do is prepare the trike so that we can drop the wing. This is a point where you can cause a little bit of damage maybe to fairings and cables that may be in the trike. So we want to just make sure that when we are taking the full weight of the wing, that we aren't going to do any additional damage to your aircraft. Okay, let's have a look at the cockpit. So the first thing I'm going to do is prepare the front end of the trike. What needs to happen is that we need to remove this front strut by removing these 2 pins here. It also means we need to remove the compass and anything that may be in your dash. And we're also going to set the parking brake so that the trike doesn't start moving away from us. Again, this is a one-man situation. So first thing I'm going to do, and it's important at this stage, particularly operating on a grass area, that you put all of these things either in a rhythmic pattern if you have a pocket, or a seat that you can use, so you just get used to that same process of that's where the compass got put, that's where the main hang bolt got put. So everything goes in the same place so that you know where it is on return. So first thing I'm going to do is remove the compass so I can get to the pins easy. And
How did that come off?
It's a very simple friction lock. You can see there's 2 indents there where it just slides in and locks in place. So we're just gently pulling it out, and I put that on the pilot seat. The next thing I'm going to do is set the parking brake. Now there's 2 ways of doing this. You can either try and squeeze your foot in and press the lever, because obviously we're not sitting in the trike. Another way, particularly if you have training bars, is to hold onto this training bar, which will offer some restriction. Press down on the foot brake, unlock the parking brake.
Yeah, I heard something go click.
The trike now the rear wheel parking brake is now set and should offer some resistance when we have the weight of the wing. Now we need to release these two pins. This tube slides over the front tube that attaches to the main keel. They're not particularly under tension, but when the over center catch is locked away, there is certainly a little bit of friction there. It's certainly part of your DI checks to make sure there's not too much tension there. So what we need to do is now prep the back end so that we can remove these two pins. Force of habit, I have already positioned the prop in its correct position for de-rigging. When this wing comes down, the rear fin keel tube will come down with it. So you don't want your prop to be offering any form of obstruction. Obviously props are a lot more expensive. So you position in a Y position so that one blade is pointing down in a 3-blade situation, or just creating a space for your keel to go. Next thing we need to do is release some of the tension that's in the trike itself, and we do this with the over center catch that is here. This over center catch is quite an important part. It's labelled top so that you know that you got the right way. And all we're doing at this point is just pulling this up, and you can see that the main pylon just slightly moved forward. Okay, so these pins are held in with tangs or clips, and simply we want to disconnect one of these pins. See them there?
That's easy losable.
Yeah, very easy losable. So as you take this out, it should come, put it straight back on. That way you don't lose it. Now, most Microlights should have this retaining strap. This one's made out of steel with tangs. If you haven't got one of those, I would certainly make sure you have one of those, because these pins, again, you really want those. So once we've done one, we can then do the next one. So now the trike is prepped and ready for us to drop the wing. So we need to go in now, put ourselves in a committal area. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the over center catch. It simply comes off. Next thing I'm going to do is release the wing from its seat belts, allowing this to come forwards. I'm now obviously in a wing up situation, but I've still got control of the wing. Should there be a gust, I can move the wing back and prevent that aircraft from moving around. Next thing I'm going to do is slide the front strut up to the main pylon. This is where you get the separation. What we need to now do is a gentle push against the pylon, and we can lower the screen down. This generates a space now for the pylon to come forward, and we're ready to drop the wing. The easiest way of doing this is put the pylon on your shoulder and position yourself in the front of the trike. And all it's doing is now just gently pulling against the pylon, watching the rear keel. I've now got the weight, and I'm lowering it down on my arms, keeping my back nice and straight, and bending the knees to put the front strut and main bar directly onto the floor. So this is now in the squat position. This is where we've dropped the wing. The weight is firmly on the wing and no longer on the trike. It's acting as a 3-point pivot. This is a great situation to be able to put your aircraft in should you land in a field or should you be camping overnight somewhere. It's just a much safer environment should the winds be changing direction. Once it's in this position, you can also tie the wing down a lot more secure by using a tie down on the nose and through the 2 inspection pockets to add a nice triangulation to stop that wing from moving around. So being able to get your aircraft in the squat position is a great place to be. The next thing we need to do is prepare the wing to be dropped. Easy. So the next thing we need to do is remove the trike from the wing. A very, very simple process. We need to remove the main hang bolt, disconnect any secondary electrics should you have a strobe, antenna or a camera system. Obviously this is where cables should have some form of quick release. And the easiest way of doing this is first of all make sure that the pylon is in line with the main hang bracket. Hang brackets do differ from wing to wing, but just make sure that it's offering up little resistance. There should be just one of these little nappy pin styles holding the catch in place. Just remove that and then simply unscrew one side. Now this can be slightly awkward, so when you're getting near to the end of the threads, just give it just a slight push and that will make sure that you can get more grip on the other side to pull that main hang bolt free. Before I release this pylon does have a pneumatic arm, so there's an element of tension in this arm, so we just don't want to make sure that it comes up straight away. So before I remove the pin, just disconnecting the aerial and the camera system that's on this particular aircraft. I can now slide out the main hang bolt, put the nut back together and put this with my other savables. Now that we're free, we know that the brakes are off, checking that the area is clear, using the training bar to help me steer, gently push back the trike. We're in a position where we are ready to disassemble the A-frame and put the wing on the floor so that we can get from this position into a bagging situation. In order to do that, we need to position the wing back on the A-frame and disconnect the nose catch. Now whilst we're doing this, it's worth holding on to the nose wire so that we're keeping that negative angle of attack and that we're in control of the weight of the wing. Remembering that the weight of the wing is going to be pivoting on the A-frame, so if we go it back, the aircraft will want to fall away. We can use the rear tension wires to stop the A-frame from collapsing. If it's in this position, there is a chance it will collapse. So we want to keep that weight pushed against the rear flying wires. To remove the nose catch, we need to remove there's a pit pin on the over center catch. So it's very simple, a push. And the pit pin comes free. It again should be on a lanyard so that it doesn't disappear. And you can see already that the wing has gone a little bit more unstable. Disconnect the nose wires and throw them through the A-frame. This process now is very simple. We're in an unstable situation. We don't want this wing sitting here for too long. I'm pulling down on this wing to keep the tension. We need to get this wing on the floor. If there was two of you, one would be at the front and one would be at the back. But I'm on my own, so I'll show you a tip that I was shown over 10 years ago that's always been useful for me. You ready?
And the tip is, do it fast.
Yeah, very much so. What you're doing is keeping that keel. You don't want it to come down on the rear keel of the tube. It will take the load. By using the wing, it's acting against the air force, and in effect it's flying down. Keeps the wing nice and level, puts it on the floor. The next thing we need to do is detension this wing. You see there's still a lot of tension in this Flexwing Microlight, Ultralight. What happens is there is a floating cross tube that works between the two leading edges, and that's pulled back in order to keep the tension out on the wings. We need to release that tension by taking it off its main center catch. In order to get to this, there is a inspection pocket here. Simply unzip this. You'll find the keyway lock here. There is another nappy pin to remove. My advice is buy lots of these if you're rigging and de-rigging, because this is the one thing that you'll lose a lot. Put that pin back. Can't put it back in position yet, so what I tend to do is just hook it up on one of the strings. In order to detension the wing, you need to position yourself backwards, and you can see that I've put my feet either side and I'm going to be pushing against the A-frame. Don't put your feet in the middle because there's a risk of putting a bend in your control bar. So keeping keeping your legs nice and wide. This is where you'll find these bungee ropes or static ropes, and we can release these pulling against the bungee. Quick wrap around one hand, and all I'm doing is I'm pulling back so that it comes off the keyway latch, and then I can feed this back in. Don't just let it go, there's a lot of tension there. And you can see that the wing is now relaxing as I'm just releasing that tension out of the wing. There is still some tension in the wing, so what we need to do is manually by hand just bring those wing tips in just a little closer, just to make those battens a lot easier to remove. So the easiest way of doing this is just little bits in stages. Don't drag the wing, you got to lift the wing and move it back. So don't just drag it this way across the floor, lift the wing ever so slightly and walk it in. You see I haven't moved my feet, I've moved the bar from one foot to the next, and I would do the same on that side. Taking a bit more tension out of the wing creates areas that we can move. You don't want to do too much because obviously the battens are still in the wing and you don't want to cause any damage to the battens. But battens, and certainly the positioning and the way you put them in and out of a Flexwing, is very, very important. A thing worth noting is that they are coloured. So you can see that the right wing is coloured green and the left wing or port wing is coloured right. It's very easy to damage the wing by the incorrectly installing or removing the battens. First thing we need to do is take the tension from the battens by removing the bungee. Some, or the more modern machines, tend to use this bungee cord, which does allow for some movement. Some of the older ones use a static cord, so there's no bungee and it's all in the tension. We'll cover that one on a separate thing because they can be slightly difficult, and again you can cause varying damage. So the easiest way to remove these, first of all, is to remove one bungee and then the other side of the bungee, releasing the batten, and then gently, just hand movements at a time. Don't do big pulls. A little bit at a time, gently, and I'll show you the reason why. So this is the number 12 batten, and you can see that on the end of this there is a former. You can see the shape of the batten there, and this is made of nylon. If we were to pull this back really sharp, it creates friction heat and very easy to burn your wing. The same when you're putting them in. Ramming them in, it might get caught in a crease, and very easy, being as pointed as they are, to push them straight through your wing. Now, wing repairs aren't necessarily the end of the world, but it's certainly the end of your flying on that particular day. So following a methodical pattern, we're going to take one batten out of it at a time. These battens are quite fragile and they're very easy to bend. So work along the leading edge, but always put your battens as far away from you as possible so that you don't accidentally tread on them or lose one under a wing. And I'm going to start removing these battens ever so carefully and just inspecting them as they come out. It's worth remembering that there are upper side battens or top surface battens and lower surface battens. To get to the lower surface battens, just prop the wing up so it's where your knee is here, reach underneath, and again, following the same principle, you can pull out the lower battens. It's easy to recognise the lower battens because there is no camber on the leading edge. It should be a nice flat batten. So I've just gathered up all my battens, and I'm keeping all the green ones on one side, I'm keeping all the red ones on the other side. Again, OCD, I have to keep the red ones to port. And what I want to do is get these into their batten bag, and a batten bag should obviously come with your wing. If you haven't got one, it's certainly an investment to get, because this is what's going to keep your battens together and stop them from getting any damage. Now I put the battens in my safe area. You can see this is where I'm storing some of my keepables. Brings me back around to the nose, and again this brings me into the methodical of keeping that same system going. Because now we're here, I can remove the main nose batten as well. This comes from the front outwards this way. It's quite a steep camber and quite difficult to remove. It comes with a little lanyard here that you can pull and sits on one of the bolts that are on the main keel of the wing. What I've done is I've moved the wings now just another metre in closer, again to release some of the tension that's in the wing. Even when it's slack, there is still built-in tension. So what I'm going to do is just remove this by pulling backwards and then just slightly pull it to one side. The camber on this means that in this position it won't go down, so I've got to be turning and twisting as I'm bringing this out. Again, feeling for any restriction to the point where it's turned pretty much 180 degrees and then the batten comes out. Okay, so that's the battens removed, the wing is nice and safe, it's been detensionized. What we can now do is think about folding the wing up and looking at getting it into its bag ready for removal. So now we're in a position where we're ready to fold the wing, and it's important remembering that at this point you can do damage to your actual sail fabric, and so this point it's all about protecting the skin. What we need to do is slowly fold the wings together so that we are now parallel with each other. We need to fold the washout rods in and secure those, and then we're in a position where we can drop the king post and look at getting the wing into its bag so that we can finish off with the de-rigging. So the washout rods are these portions here, and they're varying different designs, but this one is just attached very simply on a bungee, so it just pulls out and then folds inboard towards the wing. Further down the wing on this particular design there is a little Velcro strap so that you secure the washout rod so it's not bounding around on the floor. You certainly don't then run the risk of bending the washout rod. Again, protecting the wing, what we need to do is try and lift the wing off the ground and prevent putting any creases in the wing. So it's easy to come around about the centre of the wing, picking up on the trailing edge, just making sure that there are now no creases, and just gently lifting and pulling back in. I'm only doing short steps at a time. So now I'm going to do the same again on the other wing. Again, bring it out to centre, make sure there are no creases in the wing, just gently folding the wing back in. If there was two of you, you'd be doing this together, but always make sure that one of you is in charge and the other one is following. Don't just battle with each other, one person will get ahead of you. Once you've got the wing as close as possible, so on this particular aircraft it's got the training bar, so I can't get the leading edges any closer. Come out now to the tips and just pop that wing over the training bar, working your way down the leading edge, bringing that wing in as close to centre, folding this portion out. Same again, coming back to the tips, just pop it over the training bar, work your way down the trailing edge, bringing the two leading edges together, folding out the wings. At this point the two tips, wing tips, should be together around about 8 to 10 inches apart. Again, it doesn't really matter, but don't be forcing that wing. At this point, work your way through on these flying wires, making sure that they aren't snagged in any way, and then we can look at folding the wing. Throughout the entire process, as you're de-rigging your aircraft, it's worth inspecting varying parts. Follow the operating manual and making sure that you are following their checklists, and certainly inspecting things like wires and buckles and tangs, all of the things, consumable parts that do wear out over time. It's worth noting at this point where any wires and cables are. At the minute my main flying wires are just spilled out here. You certainly don't want to trip over them and cause yourself an injury, but certainly taking now the remainder of this wing that is here, just taking out any tension, no pulling, and we're just gently rolling this wing, not too tightly, making sure that the trailing edge is coming with it. working from the centre to the front and back. So now we've got both sides of the wings loosely rolled into the formers. What we need to be looking at doing is de-rigging the king post. Now, depending on your wing design, this may change slightly. Some designs there is a pin at the top which you remove and the king post falls backwards. Other ones you remove the rear ones and it falls forwards. And this particular one is very, very useful. What we need to do is just remove the black stopper here where the wires come through. To do this, we need to detension over centre catch, allows a little bit more play in the wires. This simply comes loose, allowing the king post, if you don't get your aerial snagged in the wires, allows the king post to move forward, and it means that these wires now offering no tension can be folded up and lay inside the wing. What I now need to do is get my wing bag, and we can start looking at getting the wing into its bag so we can look at carting this thing out of the airfield in which we're de-rigging. Okay, so I've just opened the bag up and located my protective padding. There are a number of these, and again, depending on how old your wing is and how careful the previous owners were, you may have all of these or more than these. What we have is a long bag which we put the base bar in to protect our base bar. We also should have a flat pad which will go over the main hang bracket. We get this double pouched one which goes over the A-frame uprights, and then we also have this double popper pocket, there's a word for the day, and these go over the washout rods. All of these parts are going to protect those metal bits from rubbing against your wing during transit, and certainly a great way of protecting your wing for more life. To do now is put the wing bag onto the wing. You can see that I've used the two retaining straps just to keep everything in nice and tight and just make it more compact. My tip for you first of all is zip up around about a foot, 18 inches, and put that over the nose. Now I can go down to the tail and put the wing bag on that end. What we need to do now is roll this wing over onto its back. So we've got the protective surface to protect the wing, and what we need to do, and you can see, is I've positioned the wing over to one side of the A-frame. We're going to use this as a lever arm, and so the easiest way we find, checking that all cables aren't going to cause any damage. So if anyone like this one is sticking out, we certainly don't want to be rolling on that one. So just tuck these wires further up, coming over to this side, using the A-frame, we can look at rolling the wing over onto its back. Again, feeling for any restrictions, and don't fight the wing. So what we need to do now is remove the base bar. Very, very simple. 2 butterfly nuts and bolts with tangs need to be removed, and then we can close the A-frame. So I'll do that now. So what I've done is I've dismantled the A-frame and removed the training bars. What I'm doing is I'm just putting the base bar in its base bar bag so that it stays nice and clean, doesn't get damaged. I'm putting this to one side. What we now need to do is bring the remaining A-frame in and just make sure that the wires are all secure. So ideally, this is where you want to locate this pocket that is here, that's got 2 slides that are there. Before we put this on, what we need to do is work our way up the A-frame and just make sure that the wires are running parallel with the A-frame. Once that's the case, you can bring this into the centre of the bag and do the same with the other side. Making sure that the wires aren't snagged. Now it's easy for these A-frame bars to sit there rubbing against the wings and causing damage while in transit or in storage. So these just pop over. Both of the down tubes. Just slide it over, keeping the tips of the tubes inside the bag. Next thing we do is we want to take this part, and this comes up over and goes over the main hang bracket. And again, you can tuck that in so that it doesn't move. Lifting the bag. Now we can start looking at putting everything else into the bag as well. Things that we want to put in there are things like the nose cone. So the nose cone can be tucked in and just folded around. We certainly want to look at the base bar. For this, you've got a lot more space near the end. So just sliding that in there. Again, the training bars don't fit in the wing bag. The last thing that you've got here is this batten pocket that just clips together. These ideally want to go over the tips of the washout rods. Again, just to stop any friction or damage going on in the aircraft. What I'm now going to do is slowly start zipping this bag up. So at this point I can now look at putting the battens in. Here are battens. Again, we don't want to do any damage. There's a lot more space near the front than there is near the end. So just tucking these in around the point of the hang bracket. And that's our wing in a bag. What we now need to do is gather up the remaining parts. So we need our front strut, our training bars, we can pop them in the trike, and now we're good to go. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to our next video where we'll go from this to this.